it's out of love. The book, it comes from love. You know, we're talking about love, and it's the love for our children, the love for our child, and for our nieces and our nephews, and so that's how that book came about.
Amazing. So exciting. Can't wait for the book to be published and to get a copy and to share it. And I'm so grateful that you and your brother have chosen to share such a private and personal story with the world in the hopes of inspiring parents and children to remember these teachings. So I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about this harmonic convergence. A lot of our focus here is we're partially focused on our planet and everything that we've talked about today and what our earth needs, and really waking up and taking action and coming into right relationship with ourselves and the elements. And then the other part is looking at the stars and the galaxy and looking at our planet as part of an even greater ecosystem. Just like we have ecosystems within the planet is also a part of greater ecosystems. And the messages that have been coming through the cosmic consciousness and intelligence has been very much consistent with the message of this earth. Your earth is it's not a resource for your life, but it's the source for your life. To reconfigure the way we relate to earth as the source of life, not a resource for life. And it's as if the star beings or the other intelligences in this vast infinite universe really want us to get that at this point. So in our final conversation here, what are your thoughts about that it would help us as a humanity, as a human family, to remember that we're part of an even bigger constellation within the universe?
Mm-hmm. I think what I would, yes, I mean, obviously we come from the earth and the stars. We come from the earth and the non-earthly elements. And a lot of our native people have stories about coming from the different stars. And so, you know, again, when you look deeply into anything, you can see where you could follow a deeper story and a deeper, an understanding of that. You know, I'm always taught to just look at my 2 feet upon the Mother Earth, and I believe in the guidance from the ancestors, and I believe in the prayers and the guidance of people who care and spirits who care, but I also believe that we're supposed to focus on our own 2 feet and see where we're standing. And we're supposed to be aware of how we're walking upon this earth, and that we're to be aware of the spirits that are here helping us in our native way. They say that, you know, pay attention to what's right here. It's there's the fire sitting right there, your grandfather. Here's the Mother Earth. You're walking upon your Mother Earth. You're sitting upon your Mother Earth. Here's the air you're breathing. Here's the water you're drinking. Here's the plants. Here's the, you know, look at what's around you. Don't send your mind way out there, because then you're going to forget where you're standing. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we're connected, but our work is here, or maybe we would still be out there, but we're here for a reason. So pay attention to what we're doing on the earth. And believe in that too, but don't let it get distracting, and then you forget what you're supposed to be doing. And I think it's the same way with some of the teachings of the Buddhist and the Taoist people. Or, you know, when you encounter something fantastic that comes from somewhere else in another world, and, you know, it's not meant to be distracting. You know, if it distracts you from your focus, then you screwed it up. You know, so pay attention to where you're at, and bring your mind home to your body, bring your mind home to your heart, bring your mind home to the feeling of your feet. When you get out of bed, you sit up and you put your feet on the ground and feel your feet and walking on the earth and being present, because I think that's the thing, that if we're not going to be present, then a lot of things can go on that that wouldn't go on if we, it's like if you're not present, there's a lot of things that can happen without you even knowing. So stay focused, because the wool has been pulled over our eyes many times. So know where you stand, know who you are, know what you're doing, pay attention. Don't let your mind go way out there, because this is here where we're working right now. They say when it's time to go out there, you're going to know about that, or you're going to remember. I believe it's our memory is in our DNA too. And I believe that some of those memories come back when they're meant to. Not everybody is meant to remember them. Some people are meant to. Some people are meant to specifically stay focused. And so I believe, yes, there's life. There's more life than here. And yes, it's a miracle that we're here on this earth. Yes, it's a miracle that this earth exists. It's even through the pain and the suffering that we go through as human beings, it's a miracle and it's worth it. And we have to pay attention to coming home to ourselves. We have to come home and be present, pay attention. What does it mean to have one thought? What does it mean to stop your mind from running all over the place? And just be able to focus and concentrate and meditate and observe and see what's going on and appreciate it, and not be thinking about 100 different things. Because when we're doing that, we're not really here. It's just you're somewhere else, and we have this body for a reason. This body is carrying our spirit for a reason. So pay attention to the wisdom of this body too, this wisdom that's trying to help us to remember that we're a part. We have a biological clock point right here. This is the one that tries to reconnect us to the earth, to the waking up in the morning, to the sun setting at night, to the seasons, to the cycles, and all the teachings that are right in front of our eyes. So we don't have to go too far. We got to look what's being taught. What is the forest showing us? The forest is showing us tolerance. The forest is showing us that there's many different species from all different varieties, and they grow in harmony together, and they stand patiently, and they're tolerant, and they help each other to grow. And so I feel it's important, but I feel like we need to focus here, what's going on here. Yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chenoa Igawa. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to share your teachings and messages with our global audience all around the world. Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you and find out more, maybe get a copy of your book, how can they best reach you?
I think the website should be working by then, www.swanclan.com, SWANCLAN.com. And yeah, I think that's the name. Just looking up the name, and there might be other ways to connect there also.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And we'll just look up Chenoa Igawa's website, www.swanclan.com, and you will have access to her books there, and maybe even some of her photography, and you can contact her directly from her website.
And some of the songs too are on there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the incredible songs. That's a real treat. Okay. Thank you for this time, Chenoa and everybody else, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, take good care. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Alabado al gran creador y formador del universo, siempre se dan las gracias. Gracias, oh corazón del cielo. Gracias, oh corazón de la tierra. Gracias, oh corazón del agua. Gracias, oh corazón del fuego. Oh cuatro vientos que respiramos el corazón de nuestra vida. Te damos siempre la gracias. Te pedimos el permiso para que nos abras el camino en las 4 direcciones. Gracias, abuelos y abuelas Balanguichea, o Palomá, dador de vida. Gracias, abuelos y abuelas Balamacacho Mijá. Gracias por cuidarnos, por protegernos en la caída del Padre Sol. Gracias, abuelo Oik Balam, abuelo Kakishaja, manantial, nacimiento de las aguas, donde nacen, surgen el agua que corre en nuestras venas, nuestra medicina, el sanador de nuestra vida. Gracias, abuelo Mahukuta Sununya, postrados en el ocaso del viento, donde recibimos el alimento sagrado de toda la producción que nos da la Madre Tierra. Gracias por darnos todo lo necesario, el alimento sagrado, el alimento espiritual, nuestro vestuario, el producto de nuestro trabajo. Gracias te damos. Te pedimos por nuestros hermanos menos válidos, que no tienes un pie, un brazo, un ojo, que no haga falta, la abundancia que haya siempre en todos los hogares.
Patience is really about trust. I see trust as like planting a seed. When you plant a seed in the garden, there is droughts that come, there are insects that come, so you have to tend the seed. But if you tend it, it wants to grow and it will produce amazing things. And if you want to teach children patience, have them plant a garden. You know, even those little cups with the seeds in kindergarten, that teaches patience beautifully. If you want to teach children patience, have them mark when the birds leave and when they come back in the seasons. If you want to teach children patience, have them put the little lines on the wall, how tall they are, and then look a few weeks later and notice they've grown, so that you invite them into the mystery of the natural unfolding. And they learn it because you feel it and you begin to trust it with them. You hold their hand and say, this world is trustworthy. This world wants you here as a child. You are a child of the universe, a child of the spirit. So you choose your intention, you plant a beautiful seed, you direct yourself to a creative project, to a visionary way of living, to a community, a family, a part of the earth, to something that is a gift that's given to you that you can give back. And then you see what happens. And to understand that is an enormous gift. Patience sometimes can be misunderstood as inactivity. If I'm patient, it means I'm holding back and I'm not going to give myself fully to something. But it's not that at all. Patience or trust is really waiting for the right season. Again, like surfing, you don't just get on your board and paddle. You wait for the right moment in the wave. Patience allows a kind of deep inner trust that we have the capacity to be with the matrix of life. And when you quiet your mind and open your heart and look to the mystery, then it's not even a question of patience. It's a question of being home. And you're home exactly where you are, which is where you always are, in the reality of the present. It doesn't mean that we don't weep. It doesn't mean that we don't care deeply about the losses in the world. In some way, as we become trusting, patient, more grateful, even grateful for the difficulties, we also allow ourselves to be touched more fully by life. And in that there is trust. In that there is a sense not of patience, but of presence that grows. Here we are in this vast ocean with the waves, and we're learning to surf. And as you quiet, how can you be anything but grateful? Grateful for the next breath. And someone who's sick knows that really well. Grateful to be able to walk and eat. Grateful for the eyes that allow yourself to see the colors of the world. Grateful for your ability to choose and move and respond, whether it's in difficulties or in opportunities. Grateful for the life you've been given. And this awareness, this presence, we could call it sacred presence. It is who we really are. It is your birthright. You don't have to be grateful. You are gratitude of the world expressing itself through you. You are the love of the world. Remember this as your true nature. Trust it. It is your home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Harmonic Convergence 2020, Day 3, Leadership of Love, What Guides Your Every Action. I am Iran Zahavi, and I am honored and thrilled to be here with a very special guest, author, mystic, poet, and creator of the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, and it's lovely to be here.
And you are beaming to us live from the UK, so and I know it's evening there and late as well, people tuning in all over the world.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to connect with you here in this time and space.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. And, you know, Richard, for those that may not know about the Gene Keys, can you share a little bit about yourself and about the Gene Keys and your teaching?
Yeah, sure. I guess about myself, I'm a very ordinary man, but I had an extraordinary experience back in the late 90s that kind of catapulted me into this role that I find myself in now. And in that experience, I, like some of us maybe have had glimpses of this, but I entered into the kind of unified consciousness field and remembered many things about life and myself and my destiny. And I guess it was a bit like having a download of the symphony of the cosmos. And perhaps like Mozart saw a symphony and then he had to sit down and write it out, right? So I then had to sit down after that experience. It lasted 3 days. And I had to sit down and then kind of figure out. It took me a lot more than 3 days. It's taken me until now, and I'm still doing it, to unravel this mystery of life and existence. And at a certain point, it kind of coalesced in me, and I wrote this big book called The Gene Keys, this big thick book, and I managed in some respect to get everything that happened to me in those 3 days into that book. But it's not the story of that, it's a code book. It's a code book of consciousness. And so it depicts 64 codes or codons, which relate to human DNA, that are archetypes of the evolution of human consciousness. So these are psychological archetypes that consist of levels and layers. So the 3 layers are the shadow, which is the victim pattern, and then the gift, which is hidden in the shadow, in the pain, in our trauma. The gift is a creative impulse. And then what I call the siddhi, and the siddhi is a Sanskrit word meaning divine expression. And that is a whole continuum. So through this book and this teaching, it's a way of understanding what human DNA is from a poetic level. And I'm a poet, really. I'm not a scientist. I have some scientific understanding, but essentially what you get from me is a poet's view of the continuum of consciousness as it manifests through humanity. And within the transmission of the Gene Keys is also a kind of woven, a deep prophecy. And it's not a kind of conscious prophecy, although it is on many of the pages, but it's an impulse that moves through the work of the time that we're living in and what we're moving towards, which is a more enlightened expression of our highest potential.
And that's wonderful to hear that you have such a positive message of the time to come, because there are many of us right now around the world that are sort of gripped or paralyzed with fear. And yet in the prophecy of the Gene Key, in your teachings and in your storytelling, you hold forth a really positive message. So can you share about that, of what you see coming and why we can feel good and hopeful about the time that's upon us?
Yeah, I mean, what I can give you is, in response to that, is something that I think every human being has it deeply embedded inside them. And there may be layers to move through before we reach it. But I call it a cellular certainty. And because I experienced it in the cells of my body. And it was a cellular certainty of the compassionate intelligence that moves through every human being and every possible cell of the cosmos, every rock, every tree, every animal, creature, star is imbued with this compassionate intelligence that has a purpose, a hidden purpose. And it moves inside us as well, and it moves through whole big groupings as well. So humanity is one group, one group consciousness. And the evolutionary impulse is moving us from this phase that we're in now, single-celled, almost a single-celled consciousness. Even though we're multicellular, we have a kind of single-celled experience. In other words, I believe that this body is mine, it belongs to me, and it stops here. And the next level of kind of breakthrough is the breaking apart of that illusion and the actual living experience of we're interconnected, we are one being. And that's not just a cute concept. The understanding that came through the gene keys is that this is a cellular change. This is a genetic change that's coming to our species, that's wired into us. The mystery of how it will come wasn't revealed to me. But the certainty of its coming was revealed and is imprinted in every page of that book and every word of my teachings in a way. And in other words, we kind of have to go there. There's no other way but forward. And what is clear though is that if you look back at evolutionary biology, you see that in the past, every huge breakthrough in species comes about at times of intense trauma. And it's the trauma that creates the upsurge so that the old can be shaken off and that the new can emerge. I mean, this is an old story, right? We all know this story. Mm-hmm. It's in every book and movie and everything. It is the oldest story. And we are actually at that threshold. We're approaching that threshold. It's beginning in these times. And I suppose what's a little bit unique about the Gene Keys message is this fact that it's actually a genetic change in the basic underlying architecture of our biology that has to take place in order that a new awareness system can open up, can come online, and that awareness system will allow us to transcend the illusion of our separateness. So yeah, it's actually a physical, embodied experience that's coming.
Hearing you talk about that so eloquently, I think about the process of a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. And in that chrysalis moment, the caterpillar just completely dissolves, right? It has that liquefied process. And I don't know what the consciousness of that creature is, but I would have to assume if it were conscious of its experience, it would be excruciatingly painful to feel every piece of you completely turn into this primordial goop. And then the imaginal cells start to pop up. The one that says, oh, I think I'll be a wing and I'll be an antenna, come together and form, and then create the butterfly, which is the fullest expression of itself. And I hear that process as a just natural part of the natural cycle of a little bit of what's happening through humanity right now, that we may be in this chrysalis period of breakdown, but many of us are becoming the imaginal cells and awakening to the fullest potential of what's possible. And what I'm hearing from you is that you're saying that's actually happening on a genetic level of coming through us, of that type of transformation, and just part of the regular evolutionary piece of that. So that being the moment now, I bet a lot of people would like to know, well, great. When is it going to end? When will we emerge? When will our wings dry and the process can be complete?
Yeah, the immortal question of when. You know, in a way, when is the wrong question. I mean, it's a human question, but when takes us away from now, and actually slows down the process, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So worrying about when is part of the old way. You know, the new way won't concern itself with when. I mean, the image that I use with gene keys and that came strongly, if anyone ever gets my book or is interested, you can read the 55th gene key, which is the kind of prophetic one. And in it, I tell the story of the dragonfly, which is similar to the caterpillar and the butterfly. Slightly different because the elements are different. So the dragonfly nymph lives underwater for 3 years as an underwater predator, very successful predator. And then one day, because it happens quicker in a dragonfly, and I think that's relevant. So one day the dragonfly nymph, it does something completely out of character. It finds a stalk of grass or a rush or a reed, and it attaches to it, and it climbs up out of the water into the sunlight. It's never ever done that before. It's out in the sunlight, and then it's clinging to this frond in the sun, and it's the sun that causes this mutation, this series of molts of transmutations. I should say that actually there are smaller molts that take place while it's underwater. There's several of them, but then the big one is when it leaves the watery environment and is in the air, and the sun starts to kind of work on it. And the heat is actually what creates mutation. You know, geneticists will tell you this. Like, heat creates transmutation. And so what happens is then the back starts to kind of split open, and the thorax starts to kind of uncurl. It literally uncurls, and then these 4 incredible wings come out. And what it is, that the way it works is it's the water of its old life that creates the hydraulic pressure that actually splits open the back and creates the body to unfurl. And just as the wings are finished, all the water is gone. You know, so the old life is actually the transformational agent that makes the new life possible. And then this thing is hanging there, you know, and it just drying, just kind of hanging, and then a puff of wind, and it's gone. And it's this marvelous, iridescent kind of creature, this dragon, that is the most magnificent, you know, expression of, I don't know what, but you know, it's so far removed. And I tell the story because the relationship between what was and what's to come is almost impossible to gauge. You actually cannot relate them. It's like the butterfly and the caterpillar. It's so different in every respect. The functioning of the new human is so different in every respect, from the way we view time, from the way we experience emotion, from the way we move, think, connect. It's all completely, everything we know is gone, in the sense of we carry with us our wisdom, but the old ways of understanding are going to drop away. And it's also a very swift process. As I understand it, it's incredibly swift in evolutionary terms. So the answer to when is coming soon. You know? But I don't know what that means in evolutionary terms.
Right, because the scope from a wide lens, that could be...
I mean, there are markers, you know, like 1987, harmonic convergence was a clear marker. As I do things in threes, right? I love threes and trinities. So I called harmonic convergence, and then 2012 was the second marker in the trinity, and I call that melodic resonance. And then the third marker is 2027. You know, so it's these years, these 30 years, and that I call rhythmic symphony. And they're kind of markers for the transition, the beginning of the transition, in a way. So in those 30 years between 1987 and 2027, a lot of that old, the process you've described, the dying of the cells and the falling apart of the old structure, and just the beginning of the cracks to appear, particularly in these years that we're in now. And obviously we have one more 7-year cycle from this year, you know, which is a cellular cycle. So it's going to be a very interesting 7 years, I would say, coming.
And we find ourselves at this Harmonic Convergence 2020, to your love of the Trinity, 33 years from the first Harmonic Convergence. So obviously no accident. No. I love that dragonfly story, and I'm thinking, equating it to, as we do with all great storytelling, how do we take the analogy and apply it to ourselves as humans? So here we are, the dragonfly, we're swimming under the water, living our lives. And for us to become the fullest expression of what we are requires us to leave everything we know and to come out into the sun and to stand on that reed and then to break down. How do we know when to do that? And again, I don't know if when's the right question, but you know, with the dragonfly, I'm assuming you've, in your contemplations, have maybe thought about it. What is it that calls the dragonfly out of the water? And for us as humans, are we just going to know? Is it something that we need to be open to? How do we answer the call when it says it's time?
It's a great question. I think that it has two answers as well. One is that it's literally a sleeping gene. You know, one of my teachers called it the sleeping phoenix. You know, it's a sleeping gene somewhere buried in the backwaters of our DNA. One little trigger, you know, and no one can predict when that trigger will fire off in a specific individual. You know, and it just fires off when it fires off. That's part of the mystery. But what it does is it creates a quickening in that person. And my understanding is that part of that quickening is that the behavior changes. And the major behavioral change is you begin to look more deeply into your shadows. You know, you stop the distracting behavioral patterns of stress and what in the Gene Keys are called the shadows. You know, you begin to slow that down. You begin to bring a real focus into the center of like, why am I so damn uncomfortable? And why am I not paying attention to why I'm so damn uncomfortable? That's the trigger. That's the result of the trigger. So you begin to have the courage to look at your own pain and begin to kind of explore it with willingness and with openness and with gentleness. And that's like the beginning of the process. I think so in a way that was the other answer, that like the other answer is, well, it's the same answer. It happens when it happens, and it can happen from you hearing this conversation. It can happen at, you know, whatever inspires you, whatever triggers you to have the courage, you know, but it is a when, actually, because we go on putting it off and putting it off and putting it off until we stop putting it off.
Yeah.
And that's when the trigger fires, you know. Right. So it's a crystallization moment, really powerful moment. And as I said, there are molts in the dragonfly larvae, you know, in its earlier phase. There are molts, there are earlier shifts where we have a go at it. You know, we start to have a go, and then we drop back into our old patterns again. And then we have another go. We go, okay, I'm going to try and explore this discomfort a bit more deeply, you know, with a bit more compassion. And then we drop back into the old patterns. But at a certain point, we just go, right, I'm putting my sword in the ground and I am not budging until this thing has revealed what's hidden inside it. It's like Rumi said, you know, the answer to the pain, the end of the pain is hidden in the pain. You know, the end of the pain is hidden in the pain. So there's only one place to look.
Right. And that's a scary place for a lot of people to look.
Yeah.
Because so many of us will do anything to avoid suffering.
Of course.
And that makes me think about your teachings with the 38th gene key, the difference between struggle and suffering. And I think that is so relevant right now. Could you expand a little bit on that connection between those and really how it applies to what's happening with so many of us in the world today?
Sure. I think, when I use the word struggle in the gene key, I use words in a very precise way, as you know, very specifically, and then I open them up and I explore them, and then we discuss them with whoever's, you, and more importantly, you contemplate the word, so each of us contemplates that word and what its meaning truly is for us. And then that word, kind of like a homeopathic pill, you take the word for that gene key, if it's struggle, right, let's say, because we have these, in gene keys, as you know, we have these profiles, which also enable us to see specific keys that relate to us through astrological data. Not astrology, but through the gene keys profile, which we could get into in a little bit. So if you have 38, for example, as one of your primary keys, then struggle would be one of your words. And you would have to really understand what that means. And because it's just a word, right? But then when you take it inside like that homeopathic pill and you start to really contemplate, well, what does struggle actually mean for me? And you realize after a while what that is. It's a feeling, it's a vibration in your body that you want to get away from, you want to resist. It's very physical, right? The shadows are very physical. And so we do anything to get away from the physical feeling. So we'll go into our head, we'll go into our emotions, through our relationship, we'll go out through the senses in as many ways as we can, because we don't want to come back with the breath into the place where the actual struggle emanates from. So when we realize, it's just a feeling, it's just a sensation, it's not going to harm me, I don't need to fear it, it's uncomfortable, yeah, but then we stop manifesting the struggle, and the struggle transforms into something different. It transforms into a gift. And in each of the gene keys, there's a gift that emerges out of each shadow. So it's a bit like the seed is the shadow, and then as the seed cracks open, the flower appears and grows, and that's the gift. And then the flower eventually becomes a fruit, and the fruit is the city. The fruit is the highest. The fruit drops from the bough, and the fruit contains another seed. So the seed and the fruit are very connected. So the shadow and its highest, and our, the very beginning of our struggle is connected to the very end of our, shall I call it, our victory.
So we cannot have that victory moment if not for the struggle. The struggle is a requisite, imperative part of the journey to allow the experience of the fruit.
Yeah.
The one cannot exist without the other.
Totally. And it's, if you actually kind of remove the charge of these words, they're actually just feelings, like fear. Like I have this expression that I do a lot of things. I do a lot of videos and things, and I do meditations that would often set to music. And one of the most popular ones is I use the expression "fear is safe," and people find it very soothing because they realize, I'd never considered it like that. It's safe. It's just you don't have to fear fear. You can go into it and feel it and experience it and surround it with this compassion and just let it live inside your body and inside your being. And when you do that, then you create this environment for it to transform, for the flower to emerge from the seed. So it's very beautiful. It's like it's a kind of divine joke, isn't it? That some god or some trickster up there thought, I'll give them the secret to the cosmos, but I'll put it in the last place they'll ever look.
Right, yeah. It's very mischievous.
Yeah.
Like very playfully mischievous.
Yeah.
I could, my own personal experience, and we chatted a little bit about this earlier. I had a significant change about 3 years ago now. Fell 40 feet in the middle of the desert. Woke up the next day in an ICU, paralyzed from the waist down. And not too long before that, I remember I kind of surrendered to the universe, and I said, you know what, I'm here. Let me serve. I want to be one of the 144,000. How can I help? And since that day, my life has gotten so much harder, right? And then it's like, I said I was with you, what's happening? But I hear something in that. I think there's a lot of us that experience these challenges, those that really want to do something really positive for the world, really want to have a great impact, often are the ones that may experience the greatest challenges. So there seems to be hope in that from what you're sharing of the necessity of it. I know for myself, I kind of shifted the idea that I don't think that the universe is testing me. I think that the universe trusts me. And that is why we're given these opportunities to grow that can only come from the challenge. And so within your teachings and what we're experiencing now, is there any of the gene keys that you would think are really applicable for us to take some wisdom from, where you find the shadow to be very pervasive for many of us, so that we can get a glimpse of what the fruit might be that we're going to bear from it?
Yeah, there are some big ones that seem to be triggering collectively, at the moment. One I've been talking about a lot recently is the 19th gene key, which seems to be a place where this mutation is digging in. And you see, the thing is, because what a gene key is it's a code embedded in all creation. So if you could see, if you put on a pair of glasses that could see, the crystalline structure of our being at the kind of base level, you would see these sacred geometries, these fractal geometries of which we're made, and these encoded mathematic signatures, out of which we're woven. And you would see that it's all connected. Everything is connected to everything else. But there are these coalescings of consciousness. That's what a human being is, a coalescence, as is a stone or a flower. So in the case of the 19th gene key, we all have this code embedded in every single cell of our being. Just as in DNA, the entire code of the DNA is contained in a holographic, form in every cell. The whole thing, right? The whole thing, which is incredible in itself. So when I talk about one gene key like the 19, it's in all of us. It's in everything. So a shift in one code is a shift throughout all creation, and it doesn't stop even at our planet. It can, this is universal. So the 19 at the human level, the shadow is called codependence, and the gift is sensitivity, and the siddhi, one which people find a difficult word, is sacrifice, and many people find that a hard word. And codependence is where we all know what codependent patterns are. They're where we think if we behave in a way that kind of is needing energy from something else or someone else and leeching off them, or in some way kind of competitive, that's creates this codependent connections everywhere. And it's a normal aspect of, embedded in human beings. We have codependent relationships, and we have these wounding patterns and these traumas that create them. And we know, from psychology, we have good understanding of them. Sensitivity is the gift, because once we begin to understand how those patterns work, and we begin to kind of separate ourselves out from those places where we're looking outside ourselves for the answers, we're looking outside ourselves for truth, we're looking outside ourselves for love. Once we begin to realize, that's a pattern that just really doesn't work. You know, it doesn't work for me or him or her or any of it, or that creature, or, you know, we realize that actually we're in the next stage is independence. You know, so we then become empowered, and every gene key, every gift level of the gene keys is an empowerment. It's an individual empowerment. So we suddenly step into the circle of our own empowerment, and we become more sensitive. And sensitive does not mean weak. Often that word gets, you know, maybe oversensitive is what that means. But sensitive is just we start to listen, we start to attune, we start to become more empathic to our environment, to the different dimensions, to the ways in which people think differently, you know, and it doesn't bother us in the same way as it did when we were codependent, because we no longer have those so many needs of other people to be loved and accepted or recognized or whatever it is we're seeking. So we stand in our independence, and then the next layer is sacrifice, and it's a big one. It's always a leap. It's the leap from the shadow to the gift is a huge leap, and the leap from the shadow from the gift to the city is an even huger leap. But it's the same leap in a way. And the city is like this divine field, you know, and it brings an end to our struggle completely, and it brings an end to our sense of isolation and separateness. And that means that we have to move through a sacrifice, and that means we have to let go of something lesser in favor of something greater, which involves a sacrifice. And our entire planet is the planet of sacrifice. Everything sacrifices itself for something greater. That's evolution. Like, so when we die, you know, if we can make our life sacrificial in that way, that we give of ourselves for the sake of something greater than us, then we've kind of immortalized ourselves. You know, we've assured that the energy of our, not just the energy of our species, but it's also the energy of our own directional soul, let's say, can continue on its evolution even after we've died. So what we're seeing now, I think, is many of us are going to be asked to make sacrifices, you know, of all kinds, you know, in order to pass through this next portal. Like, you have made a huge sacrifice, even if it was conscious or you know, it happened to you, right? Mm-hmm. It was something, probably a deep, horrendous shock that you fought with. Maybe you still are, I don't know.
I'll tell you this, I wasn't planning on it.
No.
So, yeah.
But what lies on the other side of the sacrifice? It's like the dragonfly. It's like there's something incredible that is born out of it, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are gifts that come, and this is what you've been speaking about so eloquently, that gifts that can only come from the struggle, from the sacrifice, from the pain, like the lotus coming out of the mud.
Yeah.
And what I hear you talking about, the 19 here, the codependence to sacrifice, is one, like you said, on the surface, maybe a challenge for people to understand. But as you've expressed it, what I'm hearing is the codependence is that I am dependent on you for my survival, up into the sacrifice that says I offer my life for your survival. And it's kind of flips it into the other way. And then the sensitivity is the awareness of being able to willfully shift that perception. And so does that feel resonant with the heart of it?
It's beautifully put. I mean, it's caught really beautifully by, I don't know if you know those C.S. Lewis novels, you know, that maybe you read when you were young.
The popular ones.
Yeah, with the lion, Aslan, the lion, you know, who is a kind of symbol of Christ, in a way, the Christ. Who surrenders himself, or in you might say Obi-Wan Kenobi is another contemporary example of, like, he surrenders himself to Darth Vader. You know, he surrenders, and then Darth Vader cuts him down. And of course, he then comes back. He's reborn, stronger and brighter, as is the lion, as is the Christ, as it, it's the solar energy that gives us that kind of rebirth. So we don't know what, the whole thing about sacrifice is you don't know what you're going to become, but you give yourself willingly to the sacrifice that comes your way, and that shows you're ready, that shows you're really ready for it. And everything else is a preparation for that. And there are many levels, there are layers of sacrifice. Like taking it down a notch, because it's a kind of heavy word. One of the things I've been playing with recently is what I call magical thinking. And in order to inhabit magical thinking, you have to really kind of go back to when you were a teenager and kind of open up your mind and open up to the potential of other dimensions and all of it, from aliens and ETs to, dinosaurs and dragons and unicorns, and just really open up, what if all these things actually exist? What you ask these questions, what if, and you keep asking your mind, what if, and it's incredible what neurocircuitry opens up when you start to think like that. You have to not kind of make it your worldview in a way, because you can get caught in the fantasy of believing, but it's a way of opening up the circuitry of the brain, because we're very regimented by this rationalistic scientific approach, and which is wonderful, but it's very linear. So when we add the magical thinking, which in a way is what our indigenous cultures really hold, like when you talk to those indigenous elders, they will express things to you in a way that blow your mind, blow the circuits of your mind. You're like, wow, I never thought of a rock as having an identity before, and maybe even having a kind of an impulse, an urge, maybe a destiny, those kind of things, they really open up, because there's a lot of wisdom in that kind of thinking, and it requires that we have to let go of other ways of thinking a little bit, loosen our thinking. Those are sacrifices that we have to make in terms of opening up our sensitivities. So I think there are layers and levels to it. It's also kind of playful. It's important that we're playful in this next, because things are intense. Things are becoming intense, and one of the ways to approach intense periods is to approach it in a soft way, in a pliant way, with a loose mind, with a flexible mind. That feels like a good approach.
Yeah, that we could all use a little bit of levity now, and I guess that's there for us to create. And I'll tell you, this is such a fascinating conversation and so much wisdom to share. We're coming towards the end, and so I want to make sure that we give all the space to allow people to know how they can learn more about the gene keys. How can they find out their own profiles? How can they connect with you? And how can they apply this to their everyday lives in a time when it is so essential and necessary?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the easiest way is to come to the website, genekeys.com, and then explore your free profile. You can just go in and make a profile, and then you've begun a journey. As you've seen your profile and you've kind of journeyed into it. It's a journey. This is not something that someone gives you and then they sit down and give you a reading like an astrologer or something like that. This is a journey that you have to take. And it's a journey that might take you years of contemplation. But I've also created many resources. Obviously, I have the Gene Keys book, which you can read up on your gene keys. But also you're gonna learn this art of contemplation, which is very beautiful art, that allows you to access the wisdom that's inside you, and you can use your profile as a journey over a period of time that unfolds in layers. And it's not just something. It's not thinking. Thinking is one small part of it. Thinking is what actually begins it, but then it moves deeper and deeper into our emotional life, into our relational life, into our family life, and into our working life, and then it moves even deeper into our body, into our physicality, and into our, into the cells of our being. That's contemplation. It has these layers. What I've done is created journeys for people, and we have a global community, and Gene Keys is being translated into many languages, and we've been offering these really amazing virtual retreats that explore the profile together. We have one going on now, in fact, and usually the first one is a 4-month retreat. It's a virtual retreat, which you stay in your life, you do your normal things, whatever you do in your life, but in the background is this incredible contemplation over 4 months that kind of takes you on this journey with a group of other people around the world who you get to meet and dialogue with and contemplate. So you can sign up for one of those, or you can, you may have to wait for the next one because we're just beginning the whole process of building those journeys. And but the other thing is you can begin, there's a lot of self-study journeys that you can begin. So you go onto the website, you'll find them. They're called the Golden Path series. They're really, really popular. And there are many people that just take the journey themselves and then start to share it with others. And it soon starts to take on a life of its own, as you know, from contemplating the Gene Keys. It's a field of wisdom that's sort of intangible. And there are layers and layers and levels to it. I mean, I've created a lot of stuff for people to contemplate and layers and levels for them to kind of go in and out and different doorways and portals, and I continue to create different ways to contemplate the same material. Some of them very creative, some of them imaginative, some of them quite logical, a lot of different frameworks. So if you come to the website and you can get involved, you'll join the community, you'll soon, it doesn't kind of take anything, you just get involved. And there's Facebook groups, there's YouTube channels, all the usual things. I'm always putting stuff out. So, I recommend just coming and having a taste and having an explore and see where it leads you. Follow your intuition. And you'll probably have lots of questions. And the art of contemplation will teach you to take those questions back inside and let them germinate and marinate. And then they begin to find answers inside you. Not to say that I won't answer them somewhere else, and or that if you write to us, we'll probably answer you, because we're very good at that. We're very, my team are like really, we really like to relate to people, and so I would just invite people to explore. Start with the website and have an explore around, and check out my YouTube channel. I'm always putting out little small 10-minute pieces of wisdom on different subjects, and once you get into it, you'll realize how it works. It's a process that unravels from inside us. So it's a mystery in that sense, because the wisdom lies inside each of us, and the Gene Keys just provides a framework, like a structure or a scaffolding, for that process of birthing that we've talked about to start to occur from inside us. So that's part of the magic of Gene Keys. It's unpredictability.
Beautiful. And unpredictability in unpredictable times.
Yeah.
A message of such positivity and hope, and what a key takeaway that whatever the challenge, whatever the shadow, it is the seed for the fruits to bear, and for the victory to be had, and for the new human, the new life, the joy to be created.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Richard, for coming to share that message with us at a time when we need to hear it most, and for all of your teachings and your offerings, generosity, we deeply appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. It's lovely to meet you and chat with you.
Welcome to the Harmonic Convergence 2020. I invite you to take in these magnificent visuals of Mother Earth, our home planet. When you're ready, close your eyes and bring your attention inwards. Allowing these sound waves to take you on an inward journey. Connect with your breath like an anchor, and take a few deep cleansing breaths, feeling the rise and fall of your chest and abdomen. Deep breath in and long breath out. As you inhale, drawing in fresh life force, prana, oxygen into your system. And as you exhale, letting go, releasing anything that is no longer in alignment with who you are. Allow the space of your awareness to expand, as if you are swimming freely in an ocean of sound. Set yourself free, as if you are shedding your skin. Leaving any old parts behind. As you are swimming through this ocean of sound. And as you look around, there are many other fellow beings with you right here, right now. Like a school of dolphins. Swimming, playing, interacting with each other. Notice how that feels to be completely yourself in community. And bring this sensation with you. Deepen your breath. And when you're ready, come back.
Hey, Ron, how are you?
Hey, Robbie. How you doing?
Good. Good. Well, welcome. Well, I'm welcoming Ron Guerin for the Harmonic Convergence fireside Zoom chat here. Ron's on the moon, and I'm kind of hovering over the Earth. So this is a perfect.
I'm virtually on the moon.
Yeah, you're virtually on the moon, and I'm virtually hovering over the Earth. So we're virtually set up perfectly for this conversation. So Ron, you and I know each other for, gosh, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years now. And I met you while your time at Worldview and doing some really fun stuff there, you know, trying to enable an orbital perspective, you know, by taking people up on a very large balloon, you know, I want to say what, 100,000, 120,000 feet, you know, so what a way to connect. And then, you know, I'm really happy with how our relationship's kind of developed and blossomed since then. And we stayed in touch. And, yeah, I wanted to, you know, kind of talk about, you know, I know you have a new book that's coming out. You know, it's called the, actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? So
it's called Floating in Darkness, Journey of Evolution. So.
Great. Yeah. And then your previous book was The Orbital Perspective. Right. So is this kind of follow on to that first book, you'd say, or?
I guess you can call it that. It goes much, much deeper. So the orbital perspective was all about using the perspective that we have from space to inspire people to make a difference on the planet, and particularly to work together, to collaborate together towards to solving our shared problems and our shared challenges. So it was a book about planetary collaboration, right? And Floating in Darkness, the tool that I use there is a autobiographical narrative to serve as a metaphor for the evolution of society, not only where we've been, but where we need to go. And I drew on a lot of experiences that I've had in my life that can, you know, map towards a lot of the development of society. You know, I was in the military for 26 years. I fought in combat. I was part of the mutually assured deterrence back in the Cold War. And so that highlights a lot of tribalism. You know, I've also done some things that just have incredible awe and wonder to them. I lived for 3 weeks on the bottom of the ocean in an undersea laboratory. I've been to space twice. I flew with the Russians, who were our former enemies. So there was really a lot to draw on. And this book goes, you know, much, much deeper, and I think is more powerful than the orbital perspective. And the orbital perspective, actually, both books are tied into this concept called the overview effect, where astronauts communicate a shift in perspective after seeing the planet hanging in the blackness of space. And I actually wrote the foreword for the latest edition of Overview Effect, which was written by Frank White, a Harvard professor. And in it, I describe the complementary nature of the overview effect and the orbital perspective. And so if the overview effect is that shift in perspective that you can have by seeing the planet hanging in the blackness of space, the orbital perspective is what you do with it. The orbital perspective is the call to action that comes from the overview effect. And then Floating in Darkness takes that, makes a quantum leap on from that jump off point, from that foundation.
That's great. That's fantastic. I got an early copy of your manuscript to preview that, and I'm totally enamored by what I've read so far. So that's really beautifully done.
Well, I think it's a message that the world needs to hear right now at this moment in history. And hopefully it's contained within a vehicle that people will actually listen to.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm excited to dig into that a little bit more too. And before we do, I want to kind of first give people kind of a life arc, because you have a really interesting backdrop and a background from how you got to become a member of one of the most elite clubs in humanity, right? There's only been over 550 as of 2016 astronauts or people that have ever been to space, of which you're one of. That's, if you calculate, that's 0.0000001% of all of humanity, that's present today, that's experienced that level of freedom, that level of, perspective. But before you got there, I mean, you start off as a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and I'm sure that gave you all sorts of interesting, like, kind of lead-ins to how you got into fighting for the U.S. Military to a civilian organization like NASA, and seeing the world as one.
Yeah, I mean, I went kind of the traditional route to NASA. I was a fighter pilot, and then became a test pilot, and then was selected from the ranks of test pilots to become an astronaut. But my journey to NASA started on July 20th, 1969. So that was, the day that we first landed on the moon. The first footprints were put on the moon, and I distinctly remember that moment in time. I was about 7 at the time. And just floating on a sea of possibility, realizing that I wouldn't have been able to put it in these words at the time, but at some level I realized that humanity had just become a different species. We were a species no longer confined to our planet. And I wanted to be a part of that group of explorers that had the opportunity to step off the planet and look back upon ourselves. And that dream came true about 4 decades later. When I launched into space for the first time on Space Shuttle Discovery. That was quite a spectacular day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I can imagine. When you were with the U.S. Air Force, when I read part of the manuscript, there was a point in time where you were involved in either dropping one of the nuclear bombs, when they're part of the arsenal, essentially, right? Tell us about that and what you were feeling, because I feel like that's so different from where you're at today. But at that moment in time, obviously, you're doing what you're taking orders, you're delivering on your missions. Like, what was that scenario look like?
Yeah, I mean, we got to put it in historical context. I grew up with the Vietnam War and with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and all of the things that were going on, and, with ducking, in elementary school with duck and cover drills, getting under the desk and putting our, hands over our heads, and I remember being under the desk wondering, first of all, how is this going to protect us from a nuclear attack? And second of all, why would anybody want to kill us all, right? And so it was really dangerous times. We were going through as a species, I think, adolescence. I think we still are going through adolescence, but I think we're a little bit farther along on the adolescence. We're stepping onto the bridge into adulthood, I think, right now. And again, I mean, this is mapping. My life is mapping. I think every life, I think, maps the overall evolution of our species and of society. And so, my first assignment as an F-16 fighter pilot was in West Germany. And the particular base that I was at had a nuclear mission. So besides all the other missions that we did, we had to sit alert with nuclear weapons. And if an attack was ordered by national leadership, we were to take off in our aircraft and hit targets. And so I remember, being on alert, thinking to myself that I could potentially get into a situation where I have to make a choice between, dropping one of these weapons and causing, unmeasurable suffering and death and destruction on, a population, or not do that and potentially have, unspeakable death, suffering, and destruction rain down on the U.S. and our allies. And so it was a really very, very difficult position to be in. I'm glad that we never actually had to act on that. But really, our job was to turn into a hot war. Our job there was to make sure that didn't happen. There was this theory, and that's actually the name of the first chapter of my book is Mutually Assured Destruction. It was a theory that if both sides knew that there was no way that they could come out of this in one piece, that it would prevent either side from launching a nuclear attack, which history has proven that it has, at least as of today's date, it has. And yeah, that was a very scary time, and it was one where we were able to navigate through that and come out the other side still intact. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I have to wonder, if you were given that order at your level of consciousness and awareness, what do you think you would have done?
It's hard for me to answer that because I'm so far removed from it right now. But even I mean, to put myself in that position right now, it would be a very, very difficult choice, right? Because if you're saying millions of people are going to die either way, either because if you're trying to stop a nuclear, if your target is a nuclear launch site, then if you don't if you don't destroy the nuclear launch site, then you are in effect allowing that launch site to launch those missiles. So yeah, I mean, it's a hypothetical thing, and
yeah, I know. Curious, certainly curious. Well, but I mean, but it's analogous to a lot of what's happening today, right, on the planet, where do we follow our leaders, who have different agendas? Do we stand up on our own with our own awareness? Do we just allow things to pass?
I think you always have to answer to your own conscience, right? I mean, and so to me, it's not necessarily a matter of orders. I mean, I'm just going to blindly follow orders. It's, are these orders lawful? Are they ethical? Are they moral? Are they going to lead to a worse situation or a better situation? All of those factors have to be taken into account. Is my inaction going to cause more harm than my action? In the long term. So
that's a really important point too. Inaction versus action, and then if you're taking action, it's not just following orders, not doing what you're told. There's other layers to consider, and then it's also the level of awareness that each of us has to know whether those other layers, how we're perceiving that, is correct or not, right? So a lot of variability there. So from moving from the military to going to NASA, I mean, you've orbited the Earth over 2,000, I think it's 2,800 times or so, right? You've been around the planet.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's a large amount of time. You lost count, yeah, after a while. Looking at the Earth, I mean, how many times can you look at the Earth in that perspective and then lose that novelty before you lose that novelty?
I don't know, because it never happened.
It never happened. Okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it would happen.
Yeah, and so that orbital perspective really it transcends novelty, and like our human nature is to pursue novelty, to keep ourselves engaged. So it sounds like being out there, if you're there for a few hours or weeks or months or even a year, you still have that awe kind of imbibed in you.
Yeah, I may have, now that I think about what I just said, I certainly never lost enough. The awe and wonder never ceased to amaze me and fascinate me. However, now that I think about it, we as a species are pretty good at ignoring awe and wonder. You know what I mean? And so usually what creates the most awe in us are unique things, right? Like imagine if only 550 people in the history of humanity had ever seen a flower. Right? I mean, we'd all be pretty awed, and those 550 people would be probably feeling a responsibility to share that awe and wonder. And so, I think that awe and wonder is life's way of trying to get our attention. And people ask me, I was in space for 6 months, and people ask me, did you ever get bored up there? And I can honestly say I never got bored. If I felt bored, all I had to do is go to a window and look out the window, and the Earth was always changing, and it was always indescribably beautiful. And it's just, you're just immersing yourself in awe and wonder constantly. And that's kind of the opposite of boring, right? So
yeah. And I mean, what was the longest time you're up there for in one in one.
So I flew twice. The first time on Space Shuttle Discovery, like I said, that was a construction mission. It was a 2-week construction mission. We brought up and installed the Japanese laboratory on the International Space Station. And then the second time I went up on a Soyuz spacecraft with 2 Russian military officers. And we actually launched on the 50th anniversary of the first human spaceflight of Yuri Gagarin from the same launch pad that he launched from.
Wow.
And so that was a 5.5 month mission at that time.
Wow. So you're up there for 5.5 straight months with 2 other, people that are Russians.
Well, at least 2 other people. At times it was just 2 other people. At other times it was probably up to 11 maybe, because we had the last 2 visits of the last 2 space shuttles, Space Shuttle Endeavour and Space Shuttle Atlantis, with their crews that came up. And usually the crew of the space station is 6. Sometimes it goes down to 3, but it's usually 6.
Did you start to feel lonely up there after 2 or 3 months?
You start to, of course, you're going to miss your loved ones,
Sure.
all the folks that you had to say goodbye to on the ground. You're with other people, so it's not like you're in isolation. Hopefully you get along with the people that you're with, which I did. So it was a nice experience to be up there with the folks I was up there with. But yeah, you're lonely and missing the folks that you love, for sure.
Did you have any emergency crises that came up while you were up there, or did everything go pretty smooth?
Everything went pretty smooth. We did have one instance, and it popped up on my, how Facebook reminds you of memories.
Yeah.
So it popped up on my thing today, and it dawned on me that I didn't put this in the book. And I'm like, oh, this is such a perfect thing to put in the book. So maybe the manuscript's not done. Maybe I'll squeeze this in. But we had a piece of space junk that almost hit the space station when I was on there. They made some made-for-TV movie about it or something. But we normally, if we get enough warning, there's systems on the ground, radar systems that track everything everything above a certain size that's orbiting the Earth, space junk. And normally, if we get if we see something that's going to get close to the space station, we'll get word on board and we will move the orbit of the space station. We'll raise it or lower it so that we'll get out of the way, basically. But for whatever reason, there was a very large piece of space junk that was coming right for the space station, and we being the folks on the ground, didn't realize it in time for us to move the orbit. And so all we had time to do was close every hatch on the space station. There's like 30-something hatches. 3 of us got into one Soyuz spacecraft, closed the hatch. 3 of us got in the other Soyuz spacecraft and closed the hatch and just waited. And we finished that. I think we had about 10 or 15 minutes to spare. And the object passed within, a football field's width at, traveling at 8 miles a second. And it was big. It was like an upper stage, piece of a rocket. And had that hit the space station, it would have destroyed the space station for sure. And so
Wow.
I guess that was the most what you could classify as an emergency situation, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, there's definitely movies on that type of stuff. So let's talk about the book. I think there's some amazing thoughts and ideas you put forth in this one. One of them that really struck me was this analogy or the story about Plato's cave.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be great to hear you explain it from your thoughts, because I don't think me reading it does it justice.
Yeah, part of the point of the book is that when I look back over my life, a lot of my life, I was walking through life oblivious to a bigger picture that's around us. When I close my eyes, all I see is darkness, right? And the analogy I used in the book was the analogy of Plato's cave, the allegory of Plato's cave. And if you're not familiar with that, Plato postulated, the Greek philosopher Plato postulated that there was a group of people, I don't remember how many it was, that were trapped inside of a cave their entire life. They were chained to the cave. And there was a fire behind them, and the fire cast shadows on the cave wall. So all they knew of their universe was the shadows that were cast on the cave wall. And sounds that came from behind them would echo off the cave walls, leading the folks inside the cave to assume that the sounds were coming from the shadows. And so they spent their entire life, classifying the shadows on the cave wall and learning about them and becoming experts in the shadows that they saw. And no one had a desire to leave because they didn't know of anything better. But one day, one of the prisoners did break free of his chains and leave the cave, and he saw that there was a more beautiful, a more vibrant, a more real world that was just outside the cave wall. And he felt sympathy for the folks that were still inside and went back in and tried to explain what he had seen and to help them, free themselves and to come out into the world that was better in every way than the life inside the cave. And he was basically persecuted, because people worked really, really hard to classify these shadows on the cave, and they're not going to let some, crazy person come in and tell them that they spent their whole life doing something that was not as good as what it could be, because there's something more outside the cave. And so what I say at the end of the book, I don't want to give, spoiler alerts away, but I do say that I feel at this point in my life that I have been unchained from the cave. I'm still in the cave, but I've had the opportunity to turn around and see light streaming in from an entrance. And I know there's a world out there that I want to devote the rest of my life to exploring and to getting to know better.
What do you attribute to you seeing the light outside the cave, knowing that there's this other world? What was the inflection point that brought that into your consciousness?
I think there's a lot of inflection points. I don't think I can go back and pick one. I'd like to say, going to space was it, but I think going to space confirmed what I was already on the path to learn. I think a lot of seeds were planted when I was in space that have since blossomed. Really embracing the true nature of our interdependence, between our species and every living thing on the planet and the planet itself. That's pretty obvious from space, undeniable. I shouldn't say undeniable. I guess you could deny anything nowadays, but I found it undeniable and very confirming. And so, yeah, I kind of classify it as an epiphany in slow motion. It was just a slow epiphany that, first of all, it started with a gnawing that something was missing, and I didn't know what it was. And I'm still searching. Don't get me wrong, but at least I know now that there's more than what meets the eye. Let's put it that way.
Were you always? And I feel I'm the same way, where I consider myself a seeker of truths. I see you as the same way. You have this genuine curiosity to pursue higher truths. Have you always been that way, or did that get
probably at some level? I think we all are that way at some level. I mean, I don't think there's a person on the planet that's not seeking truth and trying to understand their universe more, a little bit better. But not everybody acts on that, right? And so, but I think that's been a part of me since I can remember.
Yeah, so there's a strong urge there, and you just found yourself in really interesting opportunities to keep pursuing that, it sounds like, right? One of the things in the Plato's Cave that struck me also was the idea that people's belief systems are so powerful that no matter how much truth you show them and they even experience, they still, many of them deny it. Because they're so emotionally invested in what they have, spent a good portion of their lives believing, right? So, how do we as a species overcome that? Because that's essential programming that's been programmed across our entire planet in various ways, through our government institutions, through our media, through our education systems.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot in the book, and I use a lot of examples from the space program. And in especially on the space station, we have really, really detailed, choreographed, lengthy procedures that get sent up from the ground, and they all assume a certain starting condition. And I shared a story about how there was this one thing that I had to do. I want to get into the details, but I realized very soon after I got the procedure that it was impossible to execute, impossible to do, because it assumed the wrong starting conditions. And when I called that observation down and I offered a solution of how we could do it, it was met with a lot of resistance and hostility. And I couldn't understand why there was so much hostility. And there was hostility because somebody worked really hard on making those procedures, and I was just, throwing them out the window. And I tried to explain as diplomatically as I could that I know that somebody worked really hard on this, but that doesn't change the fact that because they assume an incorrect starting condition, they can't be accomplished. And the reason I think why there was so much hostility is because the folks in this particular case on the ground couldn't bring themselves to believe that the reality that I saw with my own eyes was different than what was in those procedures, because so much work went into those procedures. And so they were entrenched in their starting conditions. And I think that's one of the main problems that we see. People get so entrenched in their starting conditions that when facts are presented that differ from that starting condition, they change the facts rather than change their starting condition. And I think the reason for that is quite simple to state. It's a lot harder to overcome or to transcend, and that's our individual egos and our collective ego, in that we feel threatened by anything that upsets our delicate balance. Again, I think this is such a beautiful analogy. We've worked really hard to classify the shadows on the cave wall, and anything that upsets that really comfortable balance is a threat to our own identity, because we've identified with these things. We think we are our opinions and our beliefs, and that defines us. And if you disagree with my opinion, that means you disagree with me as an entity, as a person. And people get very defensive about that, and they put up walls and barriers and blockades, and that's why we have so many problems still, is we can't rise above that a lot of times.
So what I hear you saying is that our real issue is not the programming, it's our over-identification with our ego, so to speak. Our ego, being
they're interrelated, those two things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one programs the other, and then it's a feedback loop to the reinforcement to the over-identification versus, our ego being, it sounds like you're saying the ego is our thoughts, our expressions, our
that's
ideas.
What we think. Yeah, that's what we think we are.
Right.
Well,
right.
I think, I would think most people, well, maybe not most people, a lot of people realize that they are not their thoughts. They're that which is aware of their thoughts. But a large percentage of the population doesn't realize that. And I think that's a big cause of, because then if their thoughts are attacked, that means that they're attacked.
Right? So they take it personally, so to speak,
right.
Like the being, right? So if you're separating the ego, so to speak, and that's the thoughts, your identification from you, what are you?
Awareness.
Okay.
That which is aware of thoughts, that which is aware of my feelings, and that which is aware of my perceptions and experiences.
And is another word for awareness consciousness, or do you separate those two? Yeah.
No.
Okay. So this state of awareness, or this I guess a state of awareness, state of consciousness, that's this entity that's overseeing and kind of using this mind body as a puppet almost, in a way.
I don't know. I don't know if I would use that analogy as a puppet, but I don't have a better one, so we can go with that.
Okay. We'll bookmark that one then for later discussion. So if we are this awareness, essentially, what are we doing here?
That's a good question. I think the most straightforward thing is we're experiencing. I mean, we're experiencing the world. We're experiencing each other. We're we're experiencing love. We're experiencing beauty. We're experiencing all those things. Is there a purpose beyond that? I don't know. That's an excellent question. Maybe that's enough. So
yeah, maybe that is enough. In the Hindu culture, we refer to this entire thing as Leela, which is the great play or the grand play, and we're here experiencing this performance, this cosmic performance, so to speak, and then if we're able to separate our awareness from our identity, then it's more enjoyable than it would be otherwise, less suffering.
Yeah, we don't take ourselves so seriously, right? I mean,
right. Yeah, or personally. Yeah, take other people's actions personally. So this is an interesting thread because what interferes with this is fear, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So in the book, you talk about dismantling fear and how fear gets in the way. Why don't you expand on that? Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at it in terrestrial terms, right? I mean, if we look at our problems and our challenges that we face, normally the default answer is we attack them from a foundation of fear. I mean, even if you look at something like climate change, global warming, right? We tend to address it, talk about all the horrible things that are happening, are going to happen because of the temperature of the planet is increasing. All that is true. But what I found that does is when you try and address something from a foundation of fear, it closes the mind. It sets up defenses and barriers. It becomes a barrier to collaboration and cooperation. And the only way we're going to solve problems as big as that is going to be through attacking them as a planetary community, not as a single organization or a single nation. We have to come together as a planetary community. What prevents us from coming together and being an effective planetary community is fear. If we build our problem solving from a foundation of awe and wonder, on the other hand, what we find is that the mind opens up. We're open to different partnerships and collaborations and cooperations and I've seen it time and time again. I mean, I'll just give you a quick example. I have been in front of audiences where I've talked about really, really hot button issues, immigration, refugee crisis, environmental issues, global warming, and the demographics of the audience was a demographic that would normally not listen to any of that, and basically, would be very politicized, would have a bunch of just, pre-programmed, denials and counterattacks and all that kind of stuff. And I really thought that I was going to get, rotten tomatoes thrown at me. And I got what seemed like a 5-minute standing ovation. And it dawned on me that I approached all these things from a foundation of awe and wonder. The mind opened up, rational thought was allowed in, and we had a very good conversation about some really serious things that we're facing. And that is the foundation. And if you look at the space program itself, it's a perfect example. Back when we were getting ready to start the International Space Station and we were going to bring Russia into the partnership, there was a lot of people that said, how could we possibly bring Russia into the partnership? They've done X, Y, and Z. Until they stop doing X, Y, and Z, we shouldn't do anything with them. But luckily, we went ahead and we formed this partnership. And we formed a partnership based on awe and wonder. We each had a taste of the awe and wonder space exploration. We found something that we actually agreed upon. We decided to set aside our differences and work on this thing and build awe and wonder together. And what happened was personal relationships developed, a platform of trust developed, and now that becomes a platform that we can use to jump off and address the things that we don't agree on. But we tend to do the exact opposite. we tend to take the things that we agree on and use them as a stick to force the things that we don't agree on, and that never works. But I think what happened in the International Space Station Partnership is a good example for us to follow. You know, if we bring that level, that example of cooperation and bring it down to the Earth's surface, I think we can solve a lot of the problems down here that we face if we can solve them, start the problem-solving process from a foundation of awe and wonder.
So how do you scale that? So on Wonder, the shared experience that you guys have at space station, there's only a few of you that are able to do that, right? How do you bring that down into a species level, governmental level, you know, circumstance, which we're in right now?
Yeah, I think you do that by realizing that we are completely immersed every day, every second of every day in awe and wonder everywhere. We are constantly surrounded by awe and wonder, and we have learned to take it for granted. And I think we need to celebrate, you know, one of the easiest ways to experience awe and wonder is through success, right? And to accomplishment. And I think we need to not be afraid to celebrate each other's accomplishments and to highlight that and to share it. You know, when this picture behind me, this picture is Earthrise. It was taken on December 24th, 1968. And this picture marked an inflection point, I believe, between two human epochs. The old human epoch was all based on the two-dimensional map that hangs in classrooms around the world. You know, a two-dimensional landscape of nation states fighting and competing over resources and ideologies, right? But this is the real world. And when we saw this with our own eyes, or the eyes of the Apollo 8 astronauts, you know, we realized that we had an outdated map, and this was the real map. This should be the guidepost of our actions. And, you know, I think that was a turning point for us. And the Soviet Union at that time declared this picture, that mission, as a monumental achievement for all of humanity. So for a brief moment back in 1968, the Earth was one. The Earth rallied around this image of Earthrise. And, you know, it's taken us 50 years plus to really realize the significance and the meaning of this image, that we are one people traveling on one planet towards one shared future.
So the shared experience, you know, from an image, so to speak, rallied the entire planet together, at least for moments, you know, in the grand scheme of things.
We have a short
memory
and a short attention span, though. So.
Yeah, exactly. You know, with so many distractions going on and so much divisiveness, how do we recreate that? So now the novelty of this image is kind of faded, obviously. What's the next image? What's the next experience that we can share with the world?
We are being bombarded by opportunities right now to do just that. I mean, there's this cliche saying, we're all in this together, right? Everybody's heard that before. COVID-19 has proven that that's not a cliche. That literally is the reality of our world, that we are intimately all in this together. There's not a single person on the planet that is not affected in one way or the other by COVID-19. I think it's the first time in human history that we have an undeniable existential threat that affects every single person on the planet. Obviously and undeniably. Undeniably is the key word there, because we have lots of existential threats. We just don't realize it. But this is it's a heartache, and it's terrible, and it's causing all kinds of suffering. And we're paying a tremendous price. But we can be getting a benefit for the price that we're already paying. We could use this as a way to come together and to unify. Again, we do that through awe and wonder. What's happening, what you're seeing emerge, is we're all being, you know, the level of fear is rising so high that it's, you know, above our heads right now. And we need to work, each and every one of us need to work to be beacons of hope and beacons of awe and wonder, and showing how we can work together. And, you know, this is a planetary crisis. It's not a global crisis. It's a planetary crisis, because global doesn't consider people. People are statistics. They're a part of our workforce. They're a part of a consumer group, you know. But if we look at it from a planetary point of view, first of all, we bring the biosphere of the planet into the equation. And we also treat everybody as a valued member of one human family, because that's the reality of the world that we live in.
I like how you differentiated planetary from global. That's really important.
We don't live on a globe.
Yeah, we don't. We look at them, but we don't live on one. Yeah, we live on a planet, and the planet also. I mean, global is kind of this more vague of a term where it tends to talk about humanity, right? But not the environment, not the biosphere, not the entire consciousness of a planet.
Global has everything. Global has completely everything upside down, right? Global is our financial networks, it's our computer networks, it's abstract lines covering a sphere. But the reality of the world, especially, which is especially obvious from the windows of the International Space Station, is we live on a vastly interdependent biosphere teeming with life. But global, using the word global, treats everything, including the very life support systems of our planet, as the wholly owned subsidiary of the global economy, right? When it's exactly the opposite. Society, economy is dependent on society, and society is dependent on and embedded in the biosphere. So, you talk about climate change, you talk about COVID-19, the first victim of any of that is going to be the economy. So we have to get ourselves together. And global, you have to look at who's being served, right? So when you treat things from a global point of view, or globalization, for instance, so we started out with tribes, and then we got eventually through a lot of iterations we eventually got nation states, right? So your loyalty is your nation state, your problem solving occurs within the nation state, right? We've graduated from that, and we're into global now, right? So now, but if the citizens of a nation were who the nation was serving, which a properly functioning nation, that should be the case. Globalization was mostly brought into existence through corporations, multinational corporations. Who are they serving? They're serving their shareholders, the stockholders, right? So if you shift from global, if we graduate again, and we've made the iteration from national to global, we take the next step of evolution and we get to planetary. Who are we serving now? We're serving the planet. We're serving the living creatures on the planet, including humanity, because we're all interdependent. If we lose the bees, we lose the people, right? Mm-hmm. Actually, the only species on this planet that the Earth would probably survive is losing the humans. I mean, if we lose the bees, we're not going to be around for a year from now, probably. If we lose if we lose the insects, if we lose the trees, obviously we're going to. But if you lose the people, I think the planet will do just fine.
So ironic, right? I love that explanation. I think we're ready. I think it's time to kind of take that next step function evolution or a mindset of looking at this as a planet versus global,
So it's just a matter of expanding our tribe, right? We're tribal by nature. We just need to have a tribe called Earthlings, right? And Earthlings aren't only humans. And
then the question is, how do we do that, or how would that emerge, short of us landing on Mars and establishing a colony there, so to speak?
Well, we've already said it. It's easy to say. It's hard to do. We have to transcend our individual and collective egos. And so, by collective egos, there's lots of those, but one in particular that we can talk about is national ego, right? So if we shed our individual ego and then just identify with some nation or sports team or whatever, or political party or news channel or whatever you want to do, that just replaces individual ego with groupthink, right? And it's actually more dangerous because groups get away with a lot more than individuals can get away with, and so we have to be able to transcend both individual and collective ego.
Right. So essentially, this idea of a collective consciousness, coming together and transcending. I mean, with the systems in place, there are systemic changes that need to take place, right? And then we need to put systems in there to reinforce this kind of elevated awareness. Otherwise you have the opposite happening. You have the systems dragging it down. We're moving up, but then we have things that keep pulling us back, which is what it feels like right now.
Yeah, I think unfortunately all we do is slap band-aids on things, on temporary band-aids on things, because it should be really obvious to everybody that the status quo is not working. Well, the status quo is working for a very, very select few. But until the status quo is working for everyone, we will not progress, we will not prosper, we will not come up with long-term, lasting, sustainable solutions. We will just simply slap Band-Aids, and eventually we'll run out of Band-Aids. So we need to build a system that works for everybody. And you know, it's within our power. We've proven it's within our power to do things that seem impossible. It is possible to lift the entire population of the earth out of destitute poverty. It's possible to have a world where nobody dies from preventable and curable diseases. It's possible to live in a world where everybody has enough food to eat and clean water to drink. I mean, we have come somehow to accept the status quo. 5,000 children die every day from waterborne diseases. Somehow we're okay with that. We're not filled with outrage. We're not saying this can't happen. Because we have a responsibility and an obligation so that it doesn't happen. You know, we produce enough food to feed everybody, and then some. There is not a shortage of food on the planet. It's just not distributed properly, and there's so much waste. We could feed the world with what we waste every day.
Yeah, so that force holding us back sounds like ignorance, right? Which is kind of the source of fear.
Ignorance is definitely part of it. Fear is part of it because it prevents people from listening and getting themselves out of ignorance, because their fear keeps them in what they think is comfortable. But all growth comes with discomfort, right? And you know, all growth comes with darkness too. I mean, we're in dark times right now, but you know, there's lots of analogies, right? You know, your mind is rejuvenated in the darkness of sleep. A seed grows in the darkness of the earth. A fetus grows in the darkness of a womb to become a beautiful sentient creature that's capable of pondering infinity and the meaning of life, right? And so we're in a dark time right now, but sometimes these dark times can have a purpose, and the purpose is growth and coming out the other side stronger, more unified than ever. This is a wake-up call. It's a call to action. We got to answer it.
Perfect time for a book called Floating in Darkness.
That's right.
This is the wake-up call. I wanted to touch on one thing you mentioned in the book also. You had a dream on the ISS. Yeah. I'd love to hear. Tell us about that.
Oh God, that's a long dream sequence. God,
give us the highlights.
Yeah. Why don't you ask me questions about it? Because I can't. That whole story. It'll take 15 minutes to tell that story.
Yeah. Okay.
Give it justice.
Okay.
And I don't want to give too much away. This is
whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah.
So I guess in the dream on the ISS, you had this dream, you know, of a elevated humanity, so to speak, and the pathway there, right? Mm-hmm. Give us a couple highlights on what that looks like. What is that future vision?
Okay. I think that's more, the dream didn't get into that. The dream might have hinted at it, but later in the epilogue, I talk about that. I kind of touched on a little bit. You know, I imagine a world, you know, so we're at an inflection point right now, you know, and I used Earthrise as maybe where the inflection point started. But we have an opportunity to come out on the other side of this inflection point. But let me back up for a second. Let's just talk about this in biological terms, right? Right. Most biological systems, most closed biological systems, which the Earth is a closed biological system, have a typical S-curve to them. So they start out really, really flat. They have a spike in population, and then one of two things happen. Either they reach a plateau and they reach equilibrium and they thrive, or they come crashing back down. And so for all of humanity, we stayed really, really, really flat. And then about in the late 1800s, we started up. And then we hit the inflection point of this curve right around the mid-60s, right around the time the picture was taken. And so the rate of acceleration of our growth started to taper off. So we hit that inflection point. And so, again, one of two things can happen. We can come together as a species and figure this out and reach equilibrium and plateau out and thrive, or the population can come crashing down. And so one of the things we need to do is completely flip the way that we think. We talked about the economy, right? The global economy, thinking that the biosphere is a wholly owned subsidiary when it's the exact opposite. So there's I imagine this future where, first of all, let's talk about business, because I think business is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. It has the capability to either destroy our world by clinging to the old two-dimensional, us versus them, conquest, competition at all costs, profit maximization at all costs type of mindset, or business can save our planet by embracing, this new idea and to embrace the guideposts that Earthrise represents. And in this new business scheme, businesses would not be seen as independent entities operating in a vacuum. They would be seen as interdependent nodes in a fabric of prosperity where everyone has the ability to live a good life in harmony with each other and in harmony with the planet. A future where business leaders, political leaders, scientists all use the best data available they have. They all pool their resources and pool their ingenuity to come up with the best idea of what the result of our actions will be. If we pull this lever, what happens in 50 years? If we push this lever, what happens in 100 years? A future that's built because leaders take a long-term view on investment, on progress, and they're not driven solely by the next shareholder report or the next election cycle, but they start to think multi-generational, and they start to bring into the calculus, what is this going to affect? How is this going to affect our great grandchildren? What goes out the window is this idea that we're only going to think of short-term things. So, those are just a few of the changes that we need to make, but there's so much more. One big one, I'll just throw one more out there, is in this new era, no longer do decisions have to be secret to be successful. No longer, people can see how the sausage is being made. So right now, a lot of decisions are being made, behind closed doors. They're not open. They're not transparent. And I think openness and transparency is going to be a really critical part to moving us towards this future that we want to see. And I think openness and transparency will also be an incredible economic engine. We will start as a consumer group and a people to demand it. That we need openness, we need transparency from our political leaders, from our business leaders, and we're gonna exercise that through our wallets and our pocketbooks. And I think you'll find that corporations that do not have an open, transparent mindset, that are overly focused on profit maximization at all costs, are exclusive. IP is exclusive only. Those companies are going to start to see themselves being left behind, and they're going to have to adapt, evolve, and take on a much more cooperative, much more collaborative mindset to be able to keep up with the economic growth that true collaboration and openness and transparency will bring. And so I see.
Thank you for joining us tonight for this very special historic occasion. You are participating in an experiment in consciousness that involves members of the human family from all places around the world. We are collectively participating in something that I am calling Close Encounters of the Sixth Kind, a CE6. This is simply global initiated contact. It's very simple. We need you and many other people around the world to participate at the same time
and a meditation in which we fill our heart chakra with energy, with love energy. And we do this through a special breathing technique where we inhale through our nose and we exhale through our mouth. And as we exhale, we sing the note Hue. So we're going to sing this note around the world together at this time to create a cohesive sound and energy that unites us as a family, that will ultimately result in contact, we hope. So get comfortable. We're going to begin by taking a few breaths. Let's exhale and inhale through the nose. Hold your breath for a moment and feel that pressure in your lungs. Hold it, feel that pressure, and release it. Again, through the nose. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. And now slowly release it through your mouth. Okay. Now we're going to do this. And when we exhale, we're going to make the song that many believe is the note or the sound of creation. And as we inhale, let's imagine that we're filling our heart full of love. And as we exhale, we're releasing that love to the world and to the universe, to our brothers and sisters in the sky and the stars, our star family that are eagerly waiting for us to do this to a point that reaches a crescendo, a tipping point, in which they will show themselves to us. So we're going to do this for 22 minutes, and at the end of 22 minutes, we'll finish here, and all that you need to do is know that we're together in silent contemplation, looking to the stars for signs of our star families to show themselves. So let's begin. Ready? Exhale. Inhale through the nose. Okay. Now we're going to go into 5 minutes of contemplation, or 6 minutes. And I want you to hold in your mind the number 1133. Imagine you're looking at a digital clock. Close your eyes as we go into silent contemplation and imagine that you're looking at a digital clock reading 1133. And project that out into the universe, 1133. And we're going to ask if maybe they would show themselves at this time. So in silent contemplation, let's imagine the digital clock. We're projecting that image, a time, 1133, into the cosmos. And when we're done with silent contemplation, I'll bring you out of it right before 1133. And let's then look up and just look for a sign for one of our family, our star members, our star family, to show themselves or to otherwise give us a sign that they're there. And maybe this will work, maybe it won't, but let's do that now. Okay, everyone. Let's go ahead and get comfortable. We can lay down to look up in the sky. And there's, see that right there?
In 1987, millions of people around the world joined together in the first synchronized global meditation for world peace, known as the Harmonic Convergence. This historic event coincided with a remarkable alignment of planets, drawing together people of all faiths and colors to usher in a new era of peace on Earth and to initiate contact with higher dimensional beings. On July 14, 2020, 33 years later, a similarly rare alignment is occurring. Welcome to the Harmonic Convergence 2020.
Harmonic Convergence is like the launching pad for phase 2 of the cultural revolution that began on this planet in the 1960s.
On August 16th and 17th, 1987, Jose and Loidine Arguelles called for a harmonic convergence, an event to bring the global human family together, to raise our consciousness and as a result, usher in world peace. And in a time without the internet, social media, or the ubiquity of cell phones, millions around the world joined, even resulting in a collective Om on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
True believers say this is the beginning of a new age. And even the skeptics might agree we could use one about now.
Most of this energy is directed to that, to a future where we can have some of the problems of hunger and war and racism and sexism and all those type of things resolved.
We have lost this beautiful harmony way of life, and also the love that goes with it. That is the only way we ever gonna unite, is through our love for all people and everything here on earth.
It's just a preparation for the earth to regenerate itself from the way we've treated it, and to make different choices. And the energy is available astrologically from the prophecies from these different cultures.
This is about time.
At the core of the 87 Harmonic Convergence was the belief that the current Gregorian calendar system, based on a 12-month calendar year, was deeply out of sync with the rhythms of nature, giving rise to global discord as a result.
The Harmonic Convergence is based upon the cycles of time as charted by the Mayan calendar.
Ancient civilizations, from Egypt to Greece, the Mayans, the Celtic Druids, and even the Native American Lakota, operated on a 13-month calendar, known as the lunar solar calendar. They followed this calendar as a way to maintain the natural harmony of the rhythms of nature. As a simple way to understand this, consider that a year is 365 days, one full rotation of the Earth around the Sun. However, what we call a month, based on the word moon, is about 28 days. The moon rotates around the Earth 13 times in 1 year, not 12. Therefore, why do we not operate on a cycle of 13 months consisting of 28 days? Would this not be closer to the natural order of time?
We didn't know, all of us, we were living in the wrong time. So when we get on the new time, we will have a return to our natural biological cycle.
Interestingly, even a woman's natural fertility cycle is 28 days, which matches the moon's orbit of Earth.
And you better believe it, women, that's why we have felt at war within our own body system, because we literally have not had the right standard of measure for our biological timing.
The crooked calendar creates a crooked mind, creates a crooked society, creates a crooked civilization.
We got to break out of this. The Gregorian calendar is something that's really upsetting the natural balance. The effect of it is that we are living in a system of time that is out of sync with nature.
The 87 Harmonic Convergence was a call to step into a higher order of human consciousness, one that is more harmonized with nature and in deep connection with the soul's natural tendency toward love.
On a non-physical level, us being here and thinking of peace and love and is sending out energy, and that it has an effect on the cosmos.
The belief was that by tuning to higher states of consciousness, it would not only call forth a new age of peace and well-being on Earth, but would also give humanity access to higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings, proving once and for all that we are not alone.
There may be UFO sightings, or there may not be, but there will definitely be some type of communications of an extraterrestrial nature.
Rather than seeing extraterrestrial contact as something enabled by technology, Arguelles believed it's simply a natural result of raising our consciousness to a higher level, one where they could hear us and we could hear them, benefiting from the knowledge they impart. Since the '87 Harmonic Convergence, UFO sightings have continued to be on the rise, paralleling an increasing number of scientists, researchers, and former military who are disclosing the truth about our neighbors in the cosmos. In fact, for those who look, there's a fairly rich history of human and ET contact. As far back as 1958, Wilbert Smith, a Canadian government worker with a master's degree in electrical engineering and over a half-dozen patents, set out to research the phenomenon of UFOs.
I started the investigation out of curiosity and as an extreme skeptic, fully expecting to find the phenomena to be due to man-made or natural causes.
And what he found completely changed his life.
There is virtually no doubt that alien craft are visiting this Earth, and that the beings who operate them are very much like us, probably our distant relatives.
During his investigation, Wilbert Smith made contact with an ET named Alpha, who helped him understand the underlying physics and philosophy of the ETs and their spacecraft.
I began for the first time in my life to realize the basic oneness of the universe and all that is in it. Science, philosophy, religion, substance, and energy are all facets of the same jewel. And before any one facet can be appreciated, the form of the jewel itself must be perceived.
Could it be that the evolution of our spiritual nature is connected to the presence of ETs on Earth? What if connecting to higher states of consciousness, states of love, unity, and kindness were the key to unlocking a new phase of civilization, one where we recognize that we are truly not alone? Global UFO sightings continue to be on the rise, and over the 33 years since the first Harmonic Convergence, a new community of seekers, scientists, and peace activists have found that through certain meditation practices that open the heart to love and kindness, reliable contact can be made with our cosmic family.
We are not alone.
"33 years after the 1987 Harmonic Convergence, the world is a very different place. Meditation, yoga, and transforming consciousness have gone mainstream. We've seen an outpouring of companies donating billions towards social impact and ecological restoration. A new generation of entrepreneurs are dedicated to making social impact over bottom-line profit. And there is a resurgence of indigenous wisdom making its way into the Western world. And yet, we continue to participate in the destruction of ecosystems and indigenous lands. While in many ways things are better than ever, social media and smartphones have made it impossible to hide from our own shadow. We find ourselves in 2020 at an unprecedented time of division. But strong division also provides us with a rare opportunity for profound healing, transformation, and unity. And as we approach another exceptional alignment of planets and prophecy, it's time to prepare ourselves for the Harmonic Convergence of 2020. In the year 2020, while many people may still feel shy about sharing their belief in extraterrestrials, more than half of the human population believes they exist, and 61% of those who believe think that we should try to make contact. Is humanity ready to accept once and for all that we are not alone through mass contact? And there are those who are claiming that they don't need to believe in ETs because they know they exist.
I learned about Dr. Stephen Greer and what he was doing teaching people the CE5 protocol, which was a meditative practice that he developed to initiate contact with extraterrestrial intelligence.
The CE5 protocol, developed by Dr. Stephen Greer, has resulted in over 30,000 people participating in contact expeditions, many resulting in UFO sightings or even direct contact experiences.
And I was skeptical, very skeptical when I first heard about this. And there were a lot of people claiming that they had indeed met extraterrestrials, that they had had face-to-face experiences, in fact, that led to friendships. I was like, I want to look into this.
On the 5th night of a 6-day training with Dr. Greer, Mark had a life-changing experience.
Right after we meditated, we opened our eyes and we're looking up in the sky, and a ship materialized out of thin air right in front of us. When I went back to my hotel room, I could not fall asleep. I decided to sit up in my bed and do my own meditation and try to summon a ET, and guess what? It worked. I opened my eyes, and standing at the end of my bed is a light being, a being that appears to be a hologram.
Since that night, Mark has developed a deep connection with the ET named Teshbar. Teshbar has shared with Mark aspects of the ET philosophy that may help us understand the next stage of human progress.
So he told me that consciousness begins in the animal kingdom, and through the modus operandi of reincarnation, the soul, the individualized soul, is developed. And when that dies, that little spark of consciousness is released, and that happens many, 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 many times. And then we graduate to the human level. So if this is true, and I believe it is, we have this very tight connection to nature that goes beyond just being out in nature and appreciating it. We are nature. We have been those animals. You were the frog. You were the praying mantis. You were the butterfly. You were the eagle. You were the wolf.
If the soul progresses through different physical forms to learn lessons, what are the characteristics that we must now learn in order to grow to the next stage of the soul's evolution?
Teshbar said that mastering unconditional love was the key to ascension after the physical death. And I asked him the question, well, what is unconditional love and how does one master it? And he said, that's for you to discover.
What does it mean to accept and love others unconditionally? And is humanity ready to make the leap?
To truly love another human being, you have to first love yourself unconditionally. Only then can you truly love another.
Could it be that in the school of Earth, humanity is learning how to love one another? And if we can pass the test, we will graduate to join a universal family of advanced beings.
It would appear that we are well along the way to becoming truly civilized, and if we can refrain from committing racial suicide and learn to respect the dignity and brotherhood of man, we can expect eventually to be welcomed into the great cosmic fraternity of the advanced races that inhabit the regions beyond the limits of this little planet.
But if we take an honest look at the state of the world today, we may still have some lessons to learn about what it means to be a species of love.
One of the things that we are lacking on this planet is a reverence for life. And all the insects and all the mammals and birds and reptiles and amphibians, they all make a tapestry of life that we have lost reverence for.
One of the most glaring examples of a lack of reverence for life today is the continued destruction of Earth's ecosystems. Often this comes at the cost of sacred lands that have been protected by indigenous peoples for centuries. Unbeknownst to many, indigenous lands account for about 80% of the Earth's biodiversity. Perhaps there is a reason that they are its protectors. Perhaps a first step toward embodying the principle of love would be to learn from and integrate their wisdom, seeking to protect instead of extract.
All of us had gotten away from the purpose of being here. away from the Creator. We are here for purpose. Get the people to come and unite. Unity was the way the people lived before, in harmony.
Though despite opportunities for growth, humanity finds itself at an unprecedented time of opportunity to make massive change.
We must remember that in the last 100 years, we have increased our technology from the level of horse-drawn wagons to space shuttles, men walking on the moon, computers in the home, etc. If we were studying quantum physics, we would say a particle that's gathering so much momentum and so much energy is preparing to make a quantum leap into the next higher level or the next higher energy state. We are indeed beginning to enter the quantum evolution phase of the human race.
Nothing like this has happened before, in the context of which it's happening with the technology, and that we're a world community, truly a world community now for the first time.
If we recall, millions of people unified for the Harmonic Convergence of 1987. So, what is possible today in an age of mass communication?
What we are doing is an experiment in which we're engaging the planet, all the people who wish to be part of something remarkable that would result in a global sighting, where everybody sees a ship at the same time. And there's no question after this that we are not alone. And that's what is before us. That's the opportunity for us.
On July 14th, 2020, a powerful and rare alignment of planets provides a similar opportunity to the 87 Convergence. What can we do to prepare ourselves for this powerful moment and take advantage of the opportunity that is before us?
So the preparation for the Harmonic Convergence is as critical as what we do on those days. And it's really a time for people to prepare on a very deep level to come together on those days, to totally focus from their hearts an energy of love and of healing, to surround and embrace our planet, to give our total focus and our total love emanated from the heart.
The Harmonic Convergence 2020 virtual event is a transformational 10-day experience with speakers, performances, and meditations designed to help us prepare energetically for universal contact.
We want to prepare people for what's about to happen.
Evolution is spiritual and mental. We are here to advance our intelligence, to raise our mental horizons, to expand our spirituality.
We want peace on Earth. We don't want to destroy it. And there is a future for us all. We may have different ways of describing it, but we all have a common aim. And the world is getting in such a mess nowadays that we have to work hard together to get through and to make a wonderful future.
If millions of us around the planet can unify in love and kindness, can we collectively transform the energy of pain and destruction into healing and creativity? The time is now for a spiritual transformation to happen, and it starts with you, stepping into your own capacity for love and sharing it with the world. No matter what our story is, we are all capable of love and kindness. Join us for an extraordinary gathering for the Harmonic Convergence of 2020.
If you awaken from this illusion, and you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death, or shall I say, death implies life, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on probation, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. what you are basically, deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself. So, say in Hindu mythology, they say that the world is the drama of God. God is not something in Hindu mythology with a white beard that sits on a throne and that has royal prerogatives. God in Indian mythology is the self, Satchidananda, which means Sat, that which is, Chit, that which is consciousness, that which is Ananda is bliss. And in other words, what exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. Wow-wee. And all those stars, if you look out in the sky, as a firework display like you see on the 4th of July, which is a great occasion for celebration. The universe is a celebration. It is a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wow-wee. And then they say, but however, there's no point just in sustaining bliss. Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time. Or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that and come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God. Because the whole nature of the Godhead, according to this idea, is to play that he's not. The first thing he says to himself is, man, get lost. Because he gives himself away. The nature of love is self-abandonment, not clinging to oneself, throwing yourself out, as in, for example, in basketball, you're always getting rid of the ball. You say to the other fellow, have a ball, see? And that keeps things moving. That's the nature of life. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality. Not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you're all that, only you're pretending you're not.
I want to fall in love at 85, go on shuffleboard dates, and dance to hip-hop from 95. We'd rock matching tracksuits and rope gold chains. We'd look like Run DMC, but in their old age. We'd take aerobics classes, and wear bifocal glasses, and eat at IHOP, and hold hands at Sunday masses, and when it comes to the bedroom, well, nothing much would happen in the bedroom because we're 85. But we would still be down to take a walk or take a drive or sit and talk or have a drink, watch the passers-by, ask each other why and how and who and where and when, and then we'd laugh and cry again about the people we had been. I would touch her withered skin and comment on how thin it is to keep in something infinite. And she would smile, sweet and blush, and tell me that I think too much. She's right, I think too much. It's always been a problem. But then again, that's how I made my green like the goblin. When I was in my 20s, I was eating top ramen, counting up my pennies, saving up to go food shopping. But now I'm 85, and somehow I feel more alive. I turned my hearing aid up and bumped Jurassic 5. And when it comes to the bedroom, well, hopefully, every once in a while, she lets me knock her boots into the floral patterns of our bedpost, then hold her head close like death isn't chasing us, planning on erasing us and replacing us with better versions of us, reshaping us, remaking us, then recreating us with new identities so we can make new memories. Hush, little baby. Learn to walk and talk and think and lie and feel and fight and love and die and never get the answers why. She dips a joint of grass in wheat grass and we get high. Her hair is silver as the moon in the Miami sky. We still pop pills, but it's not the Xanax anymore. Whenever we can't sleep, we listen to the ocean floor. She got a Sound of the Sea CD for me from the Brookstone store, and ever since I've been snoring like a really good metaphor for snoring. Sorry, I go blank sometimes. What? I'm 85. I'm not complaining. I'm just happy that I'm still alive. And happy that I have my better half by my side, Superfly. She doesn't look a day over 65. When I first saw her, I was totally in awe. She was classical, so I was like, yo, yo, ma. And that was all it took. A single look and I was shook. I fell for her like some loose shingles from our Spanish roof. And I'ma love her till she loses every last root and has to glue dentures to her gums to chew solid food. Ooh, now that's real love, dude. That's some push comes to shove love. Not when it's convenient, love. Hospital bed love. Feed her ice chips, love. Never leave the room, love. Sleeping in the chair, love. Pray to up above, love. Have to pull the plug, love. Miss her in my bones, love.